education, then you're being white or you're selling out. And when I came to give this lecture today, I had the flu. I didn't want to do it because I said, you know something, our people are not going to want to hear this. Because I'm not going to come with the Order of the Eastern Star stuff. I'm not going to come with the end of time apocalyptic theory stuff. I'm going to come with stuff that has to do with what's happening to our people now in a way that is going to kill them in numbers you can never imagine. My family comes from, of course they're all Moors, but they come from the islands of Cuba and Haiti. I grew up seeing death in numbers and seeing people killed. And the things that are being written into law now are what people in this country are going to see what I saw as a child on the streets of Haiti, with people being forced to eat their own feces and being massacred, and things of a very, very serious nature. But it's not going to come out of the sky. And it's not going to come via lectures on abstract ideas where people don't understand the application of what's being said. And that's basically what I wanted to say about dogma. I wanted to say we are Moors because that is our legacy. Brother Hakeem, Brother Sharif are the brothers who do the history of Masonry, the history of the Order of Eastern Star. But it is our responsibility not to be followers and to find out what is going on right now. Dogma is dogma. Whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Moorish science, whether it's Pan-Africanism, you need to understand what is going on at this present moment to save your children. And I wanted to really enforce that as the foundation of everything else I'm about to say. Now, in saying that our people, Moors in this country, are the fathers and mothers of civilization, that we've built obelisks and mosques and temples, and when Columbus came to the shore, he saw the mosques in Cuba, he saw the mosques on the eastern seaboard, means that our people had a control of education and language for as far as we can remember. Now, when the Board of Education in New York City decided that all students would require a regent to attain their high school diploma, could somebody just answer me, because I'm sick, so I'm not going to preach to you guys, could somebody tell me what that did to the amount of quote-unquote Black and Latino students or Moors in this city who would graduate with a high school diploma? Can anybody tell me what percentage is going to drop in the next 10 years, if we live to say the next 10 years? Well, they say not that radically. They say 30 to 40%. When myself being a member of the CUNY community, being a tutor there, educator there, and a student there myself, chasing after my graduate basically, the end of remediation came in this book. I have one of the only 3 copies in this city, and it's called the Master Plan. And the plan was to end remediation classes, and I want to explain to you how important this is. When students come out of high schools, they are illiterate. To the rest of the world, we are a very stupid and illiterate people. We don't have mastery over fundamental mathematics and English skills, and remediation programs were the only chance that these young kids had to enter the CUNY system, to enter the 4-year system, and to become something. This was done in open admissions in 1969 in the CUNY system. And what happened is Moors were able to enter the system, be remediated, and continue on with their lives, open institutions for our own people. We put out Moors who were Nobel Prize winners, Pulitzer Prize winners for the past 30 years. A month ago, myself and other members who were working on the project lost the battle. We called the Board of Regents and fought for remediation. And the day that remediation was phased out of all the CUNY colleges, I ran into a Moor, and I gotta tell this story. And he says to me, "Why do you look so upset?" And I said, "They just ended remediation today." And he goes, "Oh, that's one battle, that's okay, you know, we have bigger fish to fry." Not really. The end of remediation means that all of your children who would have had a chance to enter the educational system, and I'm not dealing with degrees, I'm dealing with pathways into the powers that be so you can really understand what is going on in this structure, have been shut down. And there will be a depletion in City College, in all CUNY colleges, of quote-unquote people of color, quote-unquote minority Moors in the numbers of hundreds of thousands, 40 to 50%. What does this mean? In conjunction with the taking over of Harlem by Citibank and City Core, if you haven't noticed, the Jazzy J's and the other stores that now line 125th Street, City College has been taken over. So whereas I grew up in Brooklyn, all of our people are being pushed back to Bed-Stuyvesant, and all the people in Manhattan are being pushed back to 149th Street and Grand Concourse. What is our concern in this? In dealing with theories of Moorish science and who you are and why they're trying to kill you, you have to be able to see the warning signals not in COINTELPRO of 1960, but in the master plan of 1999, where your kids will not go to school. Your kids will not have the computer skills. And let me explain to you the ramifications of not knowing how to get on a computer in this millennium. There is no more cash. Since 1933, there were no more Federal Reserve notes. And people are being paid now via computer accounts. There will be no begging for 50 cents. There will be no begging for $1 or $5. You will not eat and you will die. And when I came in today, I said, and I told Brother Sharif, I said, I really don't want to give this lecture because it sounds boring and people want to hear sensational stuff. But when they pass something like the master plan, and these students from Boys and Girls and these students from all over the city, real children, not fake theology students, real children cannot enter an institution. They have been sentenced to die. That is what is really going on. They have no means of attaining the skills to eat in an economy where you will not be paid with cash. Now, in my years as understanding myself as a Moor, I've heard many Moors often say it's destiny. Man writes his destiny. Destiny changes by the second. And simply because people have written, men like you have written that it's destiny, doesn't mean it's going to come into effect just out of the sky. And I wanted to read a quote from Noble Drew Ali, a few quotes. In order to change a people, you must first change their literature. And another quote, the history of the Moors lies hidden in every library of the Union. And my understanding and my capacity in Moorish science, or what I feel I do best, is understanding the teachings of Noble Drew Ali in respect to the most powerful tool that God/man, which is what we are, has, and that is what is in your head, and how you apply that on an everyday level. When I was doing this research, one lady by the name of Christina Cocheo from City College had been calling the Board of Regents and fighting to save remediation, knowing that this is an entire structure. You want to talk about conspiracy theories to revamp the island of Manhattan, the city of New York, because the city of New York, as we know, as Moors, is the empire state. Every other legislation that will be passed in another state, economic reform, educational reform, is patterned after the reform that is done in New York City. So the decision to kick your children out of the CUNY system and out of the high schools is going to be replicated in every corporate state on this continent. And everybody's going to pay. And this is how people are going to die. Slowly but surely by mass numbers, because then everybody has to move into the projects. No one has a way out of the projects. No one has a way out of deeply concentrated areas that they could reach easily. And in doing the research, someone gave me a magazine, and I don't think anyone's ever seen this magazine. It's called City Journal. And I'm going to tell you why this magazine is extremely important, because we often speak about people in dark rooms, important things happening. Only 10,000 copies of these magazines are printed. And this is the Journal of Autumn 1999. There are only 10,000 copies of these in this entire country. This is the magazine which is sent to the Board of Regents, the Board of Education, and the men who run, or the men who've been allowed to run this country, if you know Moorish history. And I'd like to show you the images of you which are in this magazine. This is of a brother with 2 machine guns. This is of a sister who's laughing at a cocaine arrest, and you can see how she's depicted. She looks like an animal, basically. So that's 2 of the 3 pictures, and this is of a mother smoking crack with her son. And I brought this to show our people the reality of the situation, the desperateness of our situation versus the theology. Most of us, even those of us who are as young as I am, understand that at a certain point you've decided what you will do in your life, and that's it. What you leave behind for the children is what matters. We have left absolutely nothing behind. The fact that most of our people do not know about remediation, do not know about the state of health care in this country, do not know how to educate their children, wear garb but their children cannot read or write, do not know their real history, no Pan-African history, do not know that we've been here pre-slavery, is really reflective of what we may face in the millennium. And what we may face is a massacre that people in this country have never seen before in their lives. This does not happen one day, they just blow up everybody in the city. This happens through what they call the master plan proposal. You are phased out of every facet in society that can save your life and save the lives of your children. One such example is something called the CUNY card for students who are in the CUNY system. The CUNY card has a barcode on it. Your identification number is inside the card. And no matter from what campus to what campus you go, you are traced. So if I use the bathroom in Baruch, and 20 minutes I'm in the library of Baruch, they will know that, and they will have that on record. This card is also linked up to MCI and Citibank. And once again, Citibank, you hear about Citibank. Citibank also happens to be one of the largest lobbying firms against our people receiving student loans, which is more, as you know, is our rights, because we established the federal government. So receiving funds from the federal government is like taking money out of your own pocket. But Citibank received the Hog of the Year award for the greatest lobbying force against our people receiving student funds within the CUNY system. How do we fight this? I don't think there's a simple answer. I think, in fact, the problem lies in our people always looking for simple answers. But I do think the first step is in searching for what is happening now, not on what is happening in the COINTELPRO of the 1960s, but what has happened in 1999. And another significance of the master plan being implemented and open admissions being destroyed is it was exactly 30 years, and those of you know the symbolism of 30 years after 1969 that this was shut down. Knowing that we are entering an economy where there is no middle class. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, if you do not have the means of education or the means of educating your children, you have condemned them to die. No amount of rhetoric or theology is going to save these kids except what you can teach them on a really real fashion. And to explain to children that education, languages, educational reform, healthcare is something we created and then gave to the European. So to be educated is not to be whitish, is not to be a cracker, it is to be yourself, it is to be godly, it is to be in line with who you are, and it is one of the only chances we have in this new millennium. Noble Drew Ali prophesied, but it depended on what the Moors would do today. Not in a vacuum that this one man would prophesy, because if we accept that this one man prophesied and it would just happen out of nothing, we've accepted him as our God rather than implementing ourselves as our own gods and moving into the millennium in a way where we are setting an example for our children. And basically, Brother Sharif is going to come up next. He's going to be on the same line, the implementing Masonic theology, implementing law into your daily lives, to, if not save yourselves, to save your children. Okay? Thank you.
Also, I just want to announce that we have videotapes in the back, books. Most of you have seen them. I also have these t-shirts dealing with the Moorish science, flower of life. I'm selling those in the back. Basically, I don't make anything off them, about $5. It cost me about $35 to put them together. patches come from India, and the shirts are tie-dyed by hand. So right now I'm going to introduce Brother Sharif A. Bey, long awaited. He was here with Hakeem Bey about 4 weeks ago? About 4 weeks ago, he dropped some heavy science, so I'm sure you're in for a treat. Sharif.
Good to be back out here again amongst everyone. My wife made some really serious points about what's going on in the here and now, and I'm going to follow up on that. Again, to reiterate something that she had said earlier, is that a lot of us are used to, and we've fallen into the rut of being entertained and being, getting the feel-good speeches and, and the feel-good information. And we lull ourselves to sleep because it's sad, a lot of these things sound very good, and they're good to know about our history, about our culture. That's good to know. Prophet Drew Ali said in one of his old prophecies, he said that the Moors once ruled the world. Now get ready to rule it again, but this time under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. He also said that I'm going to leave the European here just long enough to teach you how to run a government. Now we know the purpose of history. The purpose of true history is actually programming for yourself in the present. In other words, if you know what you were capable of doing in the past, that gives you a vantage point to do what you need to do in the present for the future. The problem with the artificial slave history that we've been given is that it programs you to be the perfect slave. Because if all you knew that you were in the past was a slave, that's all you'll ever endeavor to be. You'll always be looking for what the insurance people call limited liability. Well, I don't have to be responsible. I'm a second-class citizen. And that's what slavery is. Slavery is limited liability. I don't have to be responsible. Somebody else is taking care of my food, clothing, and shelter, and I'm not. All right? True history, or what we call Moorish history, we'll find it saying that, that the only true history of the past 2,000 years is that of the Moorish nation. But that's a heavy responsibility. If you're told that, and we can prove that we financed the European side of this two-sealed government. We financed the European to set up here and establish corporate entities, which are now called states. They're still colonies. And we did it under our federal government, or our federal banner. Then that's a heavy responsibility, because now we, at the same time as accepting that, we have to also accept the responsibility for cleaning up the mess that this country is in today. If we're indeed the federal government, we are now responsible for what's happening, and we have to be in positions to clean up the mess. We have to be. So what the sister said earlier is absolutely essential. We cannot be satisfied, and I'm talking to myself as well. We can't be satisfied by sitting here or standing here in front of people and doing speeches and lectures. It's good, but this is not where the work is supposed to be done. The work is done in our seats of government, and we have to take that responsibility. I want to give some thanks to a few people. One of them is Brother Hakeem Bey. He couldn't be here. He was going to try to be here. But he's going to be making a few, actually he's going to be delivering some statements, written statements, but as Ryan will have that available, right, as far as his progress up in the Syracuse area, upstate New York. Also want to give thanks to a brother in Jersey, in Camden, New Jersey, by the name of Taj Tariq Bey. Puts out excellent literature under the name Moorish Order of the Round Table. Excellent literature. You can get your hands on any of this stuff, I suggest you do. Also thanks to a brother who recently made transition. His name was Brother Johnson Bey out of Cleveland, Ohio. It's the man that nationalized myself and one of my other close friends. And he was with the Moorish Circle of Mothers and Sons in Cleveland, Ohio. He was a direct personal student under Charles Mosley Bey. also known as CMV. There's I don't have a Bible here with me, but I'm going to start my lecture. The title of my lecture is Moorish Jurisprudence. Moorish Jurisprudence. The term jurisprudence is a legal term, and what it means, jurisprudence means the treatment of the science of positive law. Positive law as opposed to negative law. We'll get into that in a minute. But that's what jurisprudence is. It's the treatment of the science of positive law. Most law students, when they go to school, will tell you, they're not taught about jurisprudence. They don't even hear the word jurisprudence until the very end of the course, if they make it that far. And then it's mentioned. The science of law is why law works. And that principle is very simple. Very simple. It's very simple. A lot of the trappings around it make it complicated, so they don't, because they don't want the average person knowing. Because once you know, you're on par with other people that know. And they have to respect you and meet you on the level. They can't rule over you. What I'm going to do in the first half of this lecture is that I'm going to kind of rush people, kind of bring people up to, because I don't know who knows what. So I'm going to bring people, up to speed with a couple pertinent issues in terms of history. So we can bring things up to the present time, so that it can, so that the actual science or technical aspects of what I'm going to be dealing with can make a little more sense. In the book of Revelations in the Bible, 12th chapter, 7th verse, it speaks of a war in heaven. I'm sure most people have heard or familiar with the story of Satan and his angels, the dragon and his angels fighting against Michael and his angels, and how they fought in heaven, and how the dragon was found. No, there was no more place found for him. He was cast out. Okay. Now, what is the question? What does this have to do with law? What does that have to do with government and science of government? The term heaven in the Bible has a number of coded connotations. One of them is government. Heaven is government. All right? When it talks about a war in heaven, it's talking about a war between two parties in one particular place. That war was between this seal and that seal. Question. What country on the planet do you know that has two seals? A seal is representative of a government. That's what a seal is representative of. A seal is representative of a government, and a government is representative of a nation. You had two seals on one landmass. That's what we're dealing with here. When did this particular war in heaven take place, and which seal lost? Who can tell me which seal lost the war? Well, a lot of that actually depends on when the war took place. The war took place between the years of 1928 and 1933. That's when this war took place. Which seal won? Who knows? $64,000 question. Which seal won? Which seal lost?
That seal won. Great seal won.
This seal won? This seal lost? Absolutely correct. This seal won in 1933. This seal lost in 1933. This is one that was cast out. And in Revelation spoke of, woe unto the people of the earth, for the devil has come down with great wrath, because he knows his time is short. Now, can we translate that to events that happened around 1933? Yes, we can. What great, huge event in history on this landmass happened March 6, 1933?
Bankruptcy.
Exactly. The country officially, actually not the country, be more specific. The several European states pledged the faith and credit thereof to our federal government. They went bankrupt. March 6, 1933. What happened exactly 3 days later, March 9th, 1933? Does anyone know? 3 days later, March 9th, 1933, under executive order, House Joint Resolution 192, and the Trading with the Enemy Act and the War Powers Act, the Union of States, not United States, the Union of States declared insolvency and martial law. The Constitution was officially suspended. Don't take my word for it, find out yourself. It was officially suspended. The U period, S period, as you knew or thought you knew it, ceased to exist on that day. It ceased to exist. Can we prove it? Go to your local libraries, pull up basic information on every state constitution. You will find that from the years 1935 to 1938, their constitutions will show revisions to reflect the bankruptcy. Question: in a bankruptcy, if you declare bankruptcy, can you sue another entity? Can you bring any legal action on another entity? Can you be sued? You can't. What does that say about the several states? When you commit a so-called victimless crime, and they say the city of New York versus, or the state of New York versus. Again, this seal lost. That seal lost. It lost. That's the fallacy of the Patriot movement. That's another thing I wanted to touch on. That's the fallacy of the Patriot movement. We know that sovereignty is based on what? Don't answer. Sovereignty is based on what? Sovereignty, the state of being sovereign, is a perk, and it is based on one major thing, and that is nationality. Ironically, citizenship is also based on nationality. It is based on nationality. Very important point. Nationality means your natal identity, what part of the earth you are native to. Question: is a European native to this landmass? How in the world can he be a sovereign?
He's not native.
It's a fact. But we got a lot of us running around here with fezzes saying we're sovereign and saying we're patriots. Saying there's such thing as state sovereignty. And we wonder why this European looks at us and scratches his head and goes, they still haven't gotten it. We wonder. We wonder. We run out there and we try things, we get smacked up, they lock us in jail, they beat us up, and make examples out of it and put you in the newspaper about it too. So they scare all the other Negroes. We're working against ourselves. Actually, we're working for him. Out here experimenting. We have to understand the basic science of law and where we fit in the matrix. Where we fit in. March 9th, 1933, the several states became legal fictions. They were just paper creations to begin with. Who knows anything about corporate law? A corporation is an artificial entity created on what? Paper. It's an artificial entity created on paper. That's all it is. The states are colonies. The colonies started from 6 corporations. They still are. You come into the city limits of New York City, what does it say? City of New York, corporate limits. Question: can a corporation own land? Answer: anyone?
No.
A corporation cannot own land. So what are they saying when the cop stops you or whatever and he says, what are you talking about? You're not subject to this law, that law, the other. You're a Moor. What the hell is that? You're in New York City. What is he telling you? What is he saying? Or what is he assuming? If New York City Incorporated cannot own land that has nothing to do with the land, what is he saying you're a part of? He's saying that you are either a part of the corporate body or a subject of the corporate body. Because that's what a corporation is. A corporation is a body of trustees that manage corporate assets. Am I right? That's what it is. So now let's go back to the whole thing when you get hit with a lawsuit or you get hit with a summons to court and it says the city of New York versus. Well, wait a minute. If you're a citizen of the city of New York, as a lot of us are led to believe, how can you bring suit against yourself? Either you are one of the corporate board members, which are the real citizens of the corporate body or city of New York Incorporated, or you are part of the corporate assets that are managed. You are managed. All right? That's it. We went over the whole issue about there being two seals. What people does this nation represent? Or this government represents what nation? This seal. Anybody? Maybe. Anybody? People, we'll just keep it simple. The dark-skinned, kinky-haired aboriginals of this landmass that we call North, Central, and South America. That's what this seal represents. Believe it or not, this seal represents who? So-called white men. We call them white. Again, Moorish Jurisprudence is the science of positive law. If I say in a hip-hop atmosphere, if I'm amongst people my age or younger and with, the whole, and I say, oh, that was fat. That's a positive thing. That means, oh, that was good. But if I'm talking to somebody in the older crowd and maybe an overweight woman there and I say, oh, that's fat. That's a bad thing, isn't it? They get me smacked. Right? So you have different language for different settings. The language of finance is what? French. The language of mathematics and science is what? Arabic. The language of law is what? Latin. Fact of the matter is that I can say certain things in the everyday world and they mean one thing. I can say something else in the courtroom and mean something entirely different. So when we say white, what are we saying? Let's find out what we're saying when we say white people according to the law. Black's Law Dictionary, 3rd edition. This is also in the 4th edition.
What dictionary is that?
Black's Legal Law Dictionary. The definition that I'm reading to you is taken out of the recent editions. It's only in the 4th edition and earlier. So if you get a 5th or 6th edition, you won't find this. But it's here, and I'll have it for everyone to look at on the break. The legal definition of the term free white persons. Listen closely. Free white persons, referred to in the Naturalization Act as amended by Act 1870, has meaning naturally given to it when first used. It includes the Magyars, Lapps, Finns, Basques, and Albanians. It includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal. It does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races. So when you say white person, in a legal sense, you are calling someone God. Webster's dictionary definition of white, we all know it. Pure, unblemished, honest, square dealing, fair. Definition of black: evil, sullen, foreboding, dirty. Are we describing the way people look? Are we describing the content of their character? How many of you have ever seen a white man? He's not white. Only children identify people by colors. We've been sorely miseducated. Only children. Now, some people will disagree. I've had people tell me, no, black means this, that, and the other. All right, tell it to the judge. Tell it to the judge. Call yourself a black man in court, and where will you find yourself? The judge understands that black is not a natal identity and that you are not honoring your mother when you call yourself black. You're not honoring your mother and your father. He knows that you're still... How many people know what a 730 evaluation is? A 730 evaluation. Anybody that's ever done time or been behind bars knows what a 730 is. It's a psychological evaluation done to minors and criminals. Do you know that when the clerks, when they sit you in front of the judge and the clerk says, are you so-and-so and so-and-so? And you say, yeah. And he says, or they say, do you live in such and such place? And you say, yeah. They've just conducted a 730 evaluation on you. If you have a lawyer friend, they may tell you that. They just conducted a 730 evaluation. At that point, they understand this person's not a free individual. They are a minor. They are a ward of the court, and a ward is someone who is, according to legal definition, a person of unsound mind. They don't understand. This person just told me that their address was such and such. Was 630 West 139th Street. They don't understand. This person is telling me that they're a corporation, a paper fiction, because only corporations have addresses. Where do you live? Oh, I live at 630 139th Street. Oh yeah? So when you step off at 630 139th Street, are you dead? They know this. They know this. So when you enter yes to that, they say, okay, we're going to hit you with everything in the book. We will make up statutes to hit you with, which they do. And you will not be able to leave here without hiring one of our people from the Barristers Association of England with a branch in the United States to work on your behalf. How many of you are familiar with the Lawyer's Code of Ethics? Do you know that in the Lawyer's Code of Ethics written down, I don't care how much dough you pay the lawyer, his first obligation is to the court. Secondly, to the judge. Thirdly, to his opposing attorney. And lastly, to his client. Why is that? Of course it is. The Bar Association is a fraternity. It's a fraternity. But they want to steer you from the issues of proper natal identity and nationality. They want to steer you from these issues. Actually, I got a little ahead of myself. I want to go into a couple things. Number one, you might be interested in seeing, these flags here. What flag is this? What's the name of this flag? Everybody's correct. If anyone said that's the United States flag, that's incorrect. This is not the United States flag. The legal definition for United States does not mean the several states. Any lawyer will tell you that. United States means united sovereigns. And a sovereign is a landowner by birthright inheritance, not by conquering or conquest, as the Patriots say. Because the only way they can claim sovereignty through conquest is if you do not exist. And they did a good job on that because all they had to do is change your name. And you accepted it. And wrote yourself out of history. The reason why there's no such thing as Negro history is because there's no such thing as a Negro. The prophet said this. Noble Drew Ali said, can a man be black, white, Jew, or Negro? No. Really, what is he asking? Can a man be a man and a monkey at the same time? No. No. That's what he was asking. All right? So United States means united sovereigns. This is not the United States flag because it has nothing to do with the land. This is a trading banner of 6 European nations, corporate entities. It's a trading banner. Has nothing to do with the land. Nothing at all. Want to see the real United States flag? That's the real United States flag. Do the research yourself. It's called the treaty flag, or it's called the flag of the Confederation. It's also called the Continental United States flag. This is called the precept by doctors of law and Moorish scientists. The precept. What does precept mean? Anyone know? Precept is that which is written down. Okay? The precept follows the concept. The concept is the idea. What's the concept? That's the concept. Moorish national flag. The real name of it is Old Glory. When was this flag taken down on this continent? What year? Anyone know? Wow. Did anyone know that this flag flew on this continent? This flag was taken down by George Washington in 1774. 1774, this flag was taken down. All right? How many of you are familiar with the story of George Washington and chopping down the cherry tree? Do you think that was just a cool fairy tale they made up for no particular reason or for entertainment? No. How old was he in the story written by Parson Weems? How old was he? Anybody know?
9 years old.
9 years old. He was 9 years old when he said, "I cannot tell a lie, chop down the cherry tree." What's the significance of all that? Don't answer this. Don't answer this. If George Washington, was George Washington the first president of the United States?
No.
Okay, everybody knows. Now you know the significance of the number 9, why he was 9 years old. What president was he? He was the 9th president. He was the 9th president. He was not the first. That's a very simple one in terms of education, like the sister brought up. We say that numbers don't lie. Mathematics is a universal science. Well, we don't apply it, not even in its basic sense. They teach us the metric system in school, and then they straight lie to us about the months in the calendar. They teach us numbers. 1 comes before 2, and then 3, and then 4, then 5. And they tell us they teach us addition and subtraction. Then they tell us George Washington was the first president. But they play themselves because they tell you the year he was inaugurated, 1789. But the states declared independence in 1776. Who was president at that time? But none of us question our educators about it. We don't question them. Another big issue that kicks us in the behind is our people, and that literally disenfranchises us voluntarily, is the acceptance of this type of BS. We accept it. It's voluntary slavery. The 13th Amendment said involuntary servitude will not exist upon pain of death. All right. Didn't say nothing about the contracting of labor or voluntary slavery, did it? Case in point, if I lie to you, you may not know me, but if I lie to you and you find out I've lied, everything I say from that point on is suspect, isn't it? Isn't it? Now, we're fond of saying that this European man said this, that, and the other, and he lied about this, said we're running around Africa, bones on our nose, and he made better people out of us by enslaving us. That's a lie. We're fond of saying that, aren't we? But this same man tells you that he picked you up on a slave ship and brought you over here in the 1500s and 1600s by the millions, and you believed it. And we still believe it. And many of us make millions of dollars perpetrating a bold-faced, shallow lie. Question: when did the Black Plague hit Europe? 14th century. Right? 14th century. Excuse me?
Black people, what people?
The Black Plague. The 14th to the 16th century, the Black Plague ravaged Europe, destroyed nearly a third of its population. Why was the Black Plague able to do this? Basically, no disrespect. People who didn't know how to cook and preserve food properly. Poor sanitation, people weren't washing. How long does it take for an average trip across the Atlantic, even in the present day? I won't even go into that. How long would it take a regular ship with sails to make the trip? The average was 3 months. Now, how did they survive? To hell with the slaves, just think about the crew. How did they survive when they couldn't even preserve their own food on land? There's records of shipbuilding companies and schools that teach navigation. What are the names of those in England during that time? There should be records of it. How is it that you've never seen a slave ship in your life? I'm not talking about the Henrietta that sunk off the coast of Florida. They call it a slave ship. They call the Amistad a slave. They call the Amistad a slave ship. It was a warship. Come on. Play the language game. In my book, I talk about Toussaint Louverture, San Domingo Revolution, 80. They say he was a runaway slave. Strange, though, that every time they see a picture of him, he has an admiral's uniform on. Well, since when did slaves wear admiral's uniforms? It's said that this man repelled the greatest European navy in the history of that time, Napoleon. Ooh, wait a minute. Doesn't it take a navy to repel a navy? But they take him as a runaway slave and believe him, instead of facing the obvious facts that the man was a military strategist with an army and a navy, quite possible. There's a book my wife put me on to called The Black Jacobins. Incredible book. Little paperback. Incredible book. She made the statement, the quote by my brother C.M. Bay. C.M. Bay in his excellent literature, Clock of Destiny 1 and 2. He says, the history of the Moorish nation lies hidden in every library of the Union. The key word says it lies hidden. Us, we have feathers on, turbans, and the whole nine. But we're still Negroes because we'll run to the library and think we're going to see a book that says Moorish history illustrated. Right? With pictures, with big pictures, you know. Come on. It's hidden. How many people would think to look for Moorish history in the works of Shakespeare? That's where it is. How about, what's the name of the book? French. Candide by Voltaire. Get it. Get it. Such a, oh, but Candide by Voltaire. Classical literature. Why? You were the ones writing it. You were the ones writing it. But you were being persecuted for it at the time because we were seeing a change in the hands of power. So you couldn't put it out there plainly. You had to do it, as we say, masonically, half concealed, half revealed. So you put it in literature. I'm sure all of us here know that Shakespeare didn't write all that himself. Shakespeare was a pen name for 36 men under the leadership of one particular man. Who knows who that guy was? Sir Francis Bacon. That's exactly who he was. How many people know what he looked like? Or know his parental background? His mother was who? His mother was the Queen of England. He was the quote-unquote illegitimate son of her and a dark-skinned Moor by the name of the Duke of Lancaster. The Duke of Lancaster. He was a mulatto, as we put it.
What was his name?
Sir Francis Bacon. Sir Francis Bacon. For those of you that are familiar with the Rosicrucian Order, the man or the mythical founder of the Rosicrucian Order was a man named, they gave him a pen named Christian Rosicruce, or Father R.C. That was Francis Bacon. That was him. Father R.C. was Francis Bacon, who traveled to Fez, Morocco to learn mysticism. under a Supreme order called Order of the Rose. Getting back to my topics, history. I mentioned that we have two separate but equal nations on this one landmass. Can I prove it legally? Again, we're talking jurisprudence and the science of positive law. Yes, I can. There's a case that you need to research the decision on. The case is called Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson affirms two separate but equal nations on one landmass. Or, like it is in the back of your dollar bill, two governments well involved in one.